things that I have been speaking of, I am aware that many of the things, many of the items are known to most of us. But they are all strewn about in different places. I have been trying to organize all these data in one place, and naturally drawing upon all available resources, not to speak of my own experience with mother, and things that have not been perhaps published, but which I know for certain to be true. There are biographies, well known, well circulated, but I have specially drawn upon the volumes, 13 volumes of agenda, Satprem's 3 volumes on mother's life and message, and also the most graphic, detailed account entitled The Mother's Chronicles by Sujata Nahar. So I have drawn upon all these existing sources for developing a sequential account of the mother's life. And of course, we are never tired of hearing things of this type. They bear any amount of repetition because they relate to someone whom we all have loved and continue to love. With these preliminary observations, I proceed to describe how between the ages of 9 and 10, somewhere there, round about 10, Mira was visiting the great forests of Fontainebleau near Paris, where some of the trees are reputed to be 2,000 years old. She describes how when she was one day running with her friends of her age, naturally, the road was not very visible because of the trees, the shades, and she was ahead of her companions, and she suddenly found herself at the edge of a road, and there was a steep descent, and it was full of stones, flint stones, very sharp, very hard, and she said she was running so fast that even when she came there and she saw that it was not a road but a steep fall, she couldn't stop, and she went ahead, and she describes how she fell down. She didn't feel it falling down, But coming down step by step, she had an actual feeling of being carried and slowly put down. So much so that when her companions rushed, expecting to see her hurt, they were surprised that nowhere was she hurt, there was not even a scratch. But mother didn't find it anything unnatural. She said she felt it was natural. That was one of the incidents where what we call miracles happened. But for her, it was perfectly natural. In her state of consciousness, they were just natural phenomena. It was only 10 years later, after this incident, that Madame Theon, wife of her teacher in occultism, she said she had observed two guardian angels always around Mira. And these angels, Mother describes, they had wings of their choice because they find them pretty. Now this Madame Theon told her that these angels had always been with her, with the girl. And it was in Tlemcen, North Africa, where Madame Theon told this to her, and Mother she was surprised, and she looked to see the angels, and she said, they were there. The angels were there. So once she became aware of the existence of these angels, one day, one asked her that he would like to paint. And he asked Mira to let him use her hand. Mira was amused, and she let her hand be used by the angel to draw. And deliberately she looked elsewhere. When he was drawing, she felt his hand moving hers. And after the experiment was over, she looked at the picture and she said it was not very brilliant. So she told the angel, well, what is this? I can do much better than you. And there the experiment stopped. This companionship with the higher beings was a special feature of her life. She notes that during this time when she was carried and she escaped unhurt, she says her soul was very active at that time. It resisted the material logic of the world. Whatever your loss, that center, her soul didn't observe those laws. And later, much later, speaking of that center. She said it was near the heart, the inner center near the heart. And when she became aware of it, it was as vast as the world. And she remembered, recollected, that it was the same center to which she drew down that great light and force of which she became aware when she was, ever since she was 5 or 6, 5. At the age of 8, she started painting. By the age of 10, she had started doing oil paintings, portraits at 12, and all kinds of paintings. It came very naturally to her. And she says that when I looked at a picture, something would open and show the source of that inspiration of that painting. She joined a regular studio at the age of 15, and she worked with some of the most renowned artists of her era. There are I am told by my young friend Shraddhalu, who is working upon her various sketches and paintings in the archives for preservation. There are hundreds of sketches, many paintings by her, some of which she just gave away to people. So an appeal was made to those who have received these paintings to return for a while so that they could be photographed, but none has given. And I myself know how, when the daughter of one of the disciples here married, and mother was seeing her before she left, it was to her that mother had given the message of the 7 or so constituents of a successful marriage: physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual, psychic elements combining and all that. Now she told mother that she wanted a picture to carry with her. And mother just took a charcoal piece which was at hand, took a paper and drew her own self-portrait. I don't know whether my friend has seen that. Has it come to you? Yes, it has. Like that she did many times. We do not know to whom all she has given, but she was very generous. And number of our artists have received hints, advices from her instructions. And it is a story from life which I have written about. Some of you may have read it, and that is about Maggie, who lives in the street. There is none in the ashram who does not know of Maggie. She is such an excellent person, broad-minded, generous, liberal, nothing mean about her, very popular girl. Now, when she came here from South Africa, and she wanted to join, I think I introduced her to mother, And mother saw her number of times during the blessings time, things. It was only after 6 months of her staying in the ashram that mother told her, mother showed her a photograph, a portrait, not a photograph, a portrait, drawn by her in Paris, but which she had taken care to bring it here. It appeared that Maggie, in her previous life, was a special or a particular friend of mother in Paris. And it was at that time mother had drawn a portrait. The woman died during childbirth. And when she came here, mother took her own time to fix the identity. In these matters, though mother's first perception always proved right, she did not act upon that first reaction. She always sought corroboration from various sources. So she took some months to realize that this Maggie was that woman. And then she showed her the photograph which she had brought. Obviously, she had anticipated that she would come back and meet her at some time in some place during this birth. So that is, speaking of our portraits, I remember that particularly because it was such a spectacular incident. And because of mother's artistic gifts, she was attracted and married Maurice, who was an artist in his own right. And through him, he was Andre's father, and through him she came to know a number of front-rank artists in Paris. She had naturally a special appreciation for certain masterpieces of art. Number of accounts have appeared of how she had a certain tender preference for the picture of Mona Lisa. And I believe it was Champaklal to whom she was showing or discussing that picture, Champaklal himself being an artist. And when he took the opportunity to get confirmation from her that Mona Lisa was herself, he told mother. She just smiled. She didn't either say no or yes, but it is a fact that Mona Lisa is a picture drawn with great faithfulness of one of our previous incarnations. Any picture that was shown to her, even here, by any artist, visitors, we could never imagine what would be her reaction. At times we would think she will appreciate this, at times we would think she won't like this. But her reactions would be quite different, because for us laymen, it was the form, the impression that matters. But for her, what is behind the picture? What is the vibration? What is the source of that inspiration? Once I remember, when we were waiting for her upstairs, I had the illustrated weekly in my hand. There was a portrait, a small kind of picture of a woman. She was not very attractive, as we take attraction to be. But on the other side, for advertisement's sake, there was a rounded picture of a beautiful woman, bright, attractive. So there was argument between myself and one or two others, Champaklal and others, that this is better and that is better. I was very confident that my choice of that attractive specimen of an advertisement, that was imposing, striking, by the side of which the other one looked so poor. So when she came, she was always in a kind of light mood. So she wanted to participate in the games of children like us. So she asked, "What's it? What's going on?" So I turned to her, I showed that illustrated weekly. I said, "Mother, which of these is really good?" And she said, "That one. The one which I considered at that time to be poor and not very appealing." That was a lesson to me. And I don't remember who else had sided with me or had differed from me. But her eye was always to what is be. And she explained why this is better. Now I forget that because I am not an artist by temperament and my head doesn't function in those dimensions. She explained why it is good. Similarly, I believe, yes, the picture which I had approved, which I had liked, was of a Bharatanatyam dancer, well gorgeously dressed and face and eyes and all that. Then I came to know that she does not like that movement of eyes, up and down, this way. She didn't like it. She didn't like it very much. There was no discussion because she was in a hurry. So I always, whenever there is a Bharatanatyam dance, I always remember, oh, this one mother didn't like, mother doesn't like, for her own reasons. Perhaps the movement is too vital and far removed from the psychic. She always had a preference and an eye for the psychic inspiration, for the psychic colors, psychic smell, psychic fragrance, everything psychic. So that is about art, a lot of digression. When she was 10 or 12, she had to study history books. Not always for school, but even at home, because of her brother and others, she used to read a lot of history books. And she found when she was reading history books, the books became transparent at times. The words, the lines would become transparent, and they would convey something totally different from what was written. She would see other words than those which were there. She would see other pictures than what were there. And suddenly she would get certain memories. And she would say to herself, but this was not so. This didn't happen. It happened this way. How silly. It never happened this way. And later, she found that her reactions were correct. They were wrong accounts. So she said history books would speak to her, even at that young age. Her mother had entered her in a private school where students receive particular individual attention. And of the subjects there, she liked geography because she could draw maps. She was very fond of drawing maps. So one day in the class it appears the teacher looked at somebody sitting near her and asked, why is it that all these capitals, big cities, are on the river banks? That student couldn't answer. But then mother smiled. This teacher looked at mother in mirror and she said, natural, because they are the natural rivers are natural means of communication. And that was the answer which very much satisfied the teacher. And there was mathematics. Mathematics, we have already known that she was very fond of mathematics, and even later she had a particular preference for higher mathematics. And when her brother was studying maths with the teacher, she was sitting there because she was interested. Now in the class, it appears once the teacher was putting a problem and the other students were struggling. So mother at that time smiled to herself. Meera smiled to herself. The teacher was annoyed and she asked, what's that? And she went and explained in such a simple way that the teacher was very much surprised. It was at that time, when she was 12, when they were asked to write an essay by the teacher, that she wrote a long essay which we now have in words of long ago, the path of later on. It's a very interestingly worked out story in the form of a dream, how one goes on postponing to tomorrow what can be done today or what should be done today, and ultimately you arrive at a castle of nothing. That's the summary, but it is translated in English and included in the small book Words of Long Ago. That is her first essay writing when she was 12. I spoke of Fontainebleau forests, 2000 years old. Right from her childhood, she had a great affinity with trees. She was explaining to children on the playground here that whenever you feel tired, depressed, sick, go to a tree, lean against the trunk of the tree and relax. In no time you will feel a fresh energy from the trunk of the tree flowing in you. You have to develop friendship with the trees. And mother had a special intimacy with these trees, some of which, as I said, were more than 2000 years old. And she would just go into meditation even at that time, when she was 12 or 13. And when she opened her eyes, she would find a lot of birds, a lot of small animals, sitting around her. Some of them would play around on her body. There was such peace, such atmosphere of joy. And she speaks of developing a relation with the trees by identifying yourself with the trees, by loving the trees. It appears at that time there was a proposal to cut down one of the old trees. Now the tree came to know that, and she spoke to mother for help, for assistance in this matter. I believe that because even in Castellini, which was a guest house till recently, there was a big tree. There are a number of trees. There was one particular tree which one of my colleagues, who was in charge of the gardens, he wanted to cut down because he felt it was obstructing the healthy growth of other trees around. But he just thought, he didn't speak to anybody. He just thought this has to be done. Now somehow that tree, it appears, came at night to mother and told her that they are trying to cut me out. Please help. So next day mother called the gentleman and asked him, is there any tree in Castellini which is bothering you? Then he said, yes, mother. Then he said, no, don't touch it. The tree has come to me and appealed to me for help. Don't do that. And the tree was left. Similarly here, after the samadhi, when you go to the meditation hall, there is a staircase just above the cashier's room. And there, in that round circle, there was a eucalyptus tree, a very fine tree. It started decaying. The gardeners, Parichand and everybody tried their best to revive it, to put nourishment, but the tree was withering. So mother asked the tree, it appears, why? Then the tree says, I feel lonely. I want to go to my family in Nilgiris. There are eucalyptus trees, huge forests on the Nilgiris mountains. Then mother said, but why? I will give you a companion. And she asked another eucalyptus tree to be brought and planted nearby. It was done, and for a while it looked as if this tree would survive. But it didn't work, and the tree died. So there was this, similarly, the last incident I would like to narrate is in the early days of Auroville, when Shamsundar, who had been appointed as the administrator by mother, when he went to her in the morning for instructions daily, she asked him, is there anything wrong with that tree, that big tree near where there is Matra Mandir? Then he said, I don't know, I don't think, but I will go and see. She said, but I think there is something. The tree was in distress, and it came to me. So when he went to Auroville in his jeep, the first thing he did was to go to that tree, and there he found that the workman had left his knife in the trunk of the tree. He had cut into the trunk and left the knife there. So the tree was naturally getting hurt. And it appealed to mother, and mother told, and that man came and told mother afterwards, mother, sorry, it has happened like this, and we have removed it now. So I am mentioning these incidents, some of which I know personally, some of which I have read, to underline how right from the beginning mother had a close intimacy with the trees, a kind of identity. They could converse with her and she could follow her. She could understand her. And I think that's where I will stop today.